Welcome everyone to the Saphira Center of Shamanism YouTube channel, where we break down the ancient esoteric practices of shamanism and the occult, bringing them into balance with the deep psyche. My name is Luke, experienced practitioner and mentor of the shamanic and occult sciences. It's an honor to have you here with me as always. I just want to announce before I start this topic today, I want to announce my new collection sections on my Patreon, one for the Sephiroth initiation and another for the Qliphoth initiation. These are very in-depth collection sections taking you through the different stages of initiation whilst giving you grounded and authentic protocols for preparation to ensure that you go into this with a solid foundation. These are very solid and tangible occult initiatory systems that are extremely life-changing if you interact with them in the right way and in a way that is optimally sustainable for your truth and for the evolution of your soul. I also give you my channeled system of initiation that you can use for all of the Sephirothic spheres and all of the Qliphothic spheres, as well as the rites of initiations into the abyss as well. And later on, I will be adding the tunnels of Set and the pathways to these collection sections, as well as rites of initiation into them as well. So very, very complete sections. As well as gaining access to this section, you also gain access to lots of other path workings and powerful initiatory systems as part of your Patreon membership. I look forward to seeing you over there. Second link in the description. Or if you want something more premium, check out the first link for my premium membership service, the Saphira Shamanic School. I look forward to seeing you over there. So today, we're going to be speaking about reverse baptism. Now, a reverse baptism is a rite of passage that is designed specifically to shed patriarchal and religious indoctrination. This is a very important rite of passage, I feel, to perform for anybody who is wanting to get into the darker aspects of the occult, particularly left-hand path related practices that are very much here to help you recover your own divinity and become the leader of your life. Religious indoctrination stops you from being the leader of your life and programs you into giving your sovereignty away to external forces and external divinities. And this is not as simple as, being programmed into God or being programmed to fear darkness or the devil, but is going as deep as the projection of one's inner power and ability to make tangible change in their lives to external forces and external divinities. It's extremely dangerous because it causes people to fall victim to circumstance, avoid chaos, and stick to false light and false order when it's extremely hard on the body and hard on the soul to do that as well. A reverse baptism is not condemning your soul. It's not initiating yourself into the dark arts, but it is actually welcoming chaos as an initiator. Welcoming chaos, welcoming dark matter, which is part of you and possesses the majority of your psyche. It is the act of actually taking chaos as a part of you so that you can operate from a more balanced space from within the two polarities that we are operating within, honoring the light and the clarity and the order as a necessary force of reconstruction, as well as honoring the chaos and the dark matter as a necessary force of deconstruction. We're talking about yin and yang, and religious indoctrination causes you to stick to the light, stick to what feels safe, instead of actually diving into the very forces that are responsible for deconstructing illusion and helping you to recover your own godhood from within your own being and from within this physical body. So a reverse baptism is an essential ritual, I feel. It's optional, but it's an important ritual, particularly for those who are interested in self-deification and left-hand path related practices and adversarial esotericism. A lot of different people have religious programming, okay? The majority of the spiritual community operates with religious programming. It just takes it out of literal religion and projects it into love and light, okay? And causes us to then stick to light and people within that community to stick to light and then run away from darkness. And then the whole light worker community is just constantly trying to remove darkness from people and themselves and life just becomes a big coping strategy. This is the danger of religious indoctrination. And I'm really not saying this to disrespect anybody who is religious. You know, everybody is on their own initiatory path and on their own path of evolution according to their soul. But for those who are really wanting to bring into balance the two polarities within them, and they're wanting to realistically stop avoiding darkness and stop avoiding chaos and welcome both the light and the dark as equal counterparts within their evolutionary process, a reverse baptism is an extremely important rite of passage. It's an optional one, but an extremely important one if you choose to engage in it. So I'm going to be taking you through this type of rite of passage in depth, exploring what it actually involves, and looking deeper at the levels of religious indoctrination that can play out within the collective, even if somebody is not consciously adopting religious practices. Important subject, so definitely stay tuned. So first and foremost, the path towards self-deification and the recovery of one's true divinity is an ongoing process. So when I'm bringing forward the idea of a reverse baptism, I'm not claiming that a reverse baptism is going to shed all aspects of patriarchal programming and the chains of society in a single ritual. But it is somewhat of a rite of passage that is then going to create a ripple effect within one's evolutionary path. Okay, when you receive a transmission or initiation, the effects of that transmission are never instant. It's not like you perform a ritual or receive an initiation from a practitioner and, you know, from the moment you've received the initiation, you're completely changed. But it's basically a transmission of energy that then causes a ripple throughout the energy field and throughout the nervous system. Think of it as throwing a rock within a still pond. Okay, throwing a rock within a still pond, it's not going to trigger the entirety of the water's response just by hitting the water, but it's going to create ripples throughout the water that are then going to stream across the entire pond. And it's the same for a ritual like a reverse baptism. You are basically saying to your soul with a reverse baptism that you are ready to exit the patriarchal system and you are ready to begin the process of balancing the polarities within you and weakening the veil between your conscious and unconscious mind. Now, a reverse baptism taps into dark matter energies, dark matter forces, adversarial currents that are not evil, but represent archetypes within your unconscious mind. They are as much external beings as they are internal beings. So the very act of tapping into the adversarial forces has an extremely dissolving effect. But when you do so with the intention to shed religious indoctrination, it directs the energy into your field and basically offers your falsehood to these spirits and they begin to devour it. Okay, so basically what the rite of reverse baptism does, depending on how you do it, or definitely what my method does, is that it calls on the Clifothic metagods and offers all aspects of religious indoctrination and anything that is repressing one's true divinity, it offers it to the Clifothic metagods. Okay, the Clifothic metagods are the combined consciousness of many, many, many archdemonic forces, referring specifically to beings such as Harvioth, such as the Goetikon or the Goetikon, Citricor, Saringoth, and other beings as well, but these are the primary four that this particular rite calls upon. It offers your falsehood and your religious indoctrination to these spirits and basically calls these spirits into your field and into your body, and you're basically committing to a path of having these spirits continuously devouring your falsehood. And what will happen after this reverse baptism is that things within your day-to-day life will start to fall away that are holding up false light, false order, and not all of them are going to be directly sort of related to religion, but basically anything that you are using to hide from yourself. So what often happens when you perform this type of initiation is that the path will start to shift around you, and you're basically going to be pulled into a much bigger current of energy that may well lead to deeper aspects of initiation later down the line, but is ultimately going to lead you on a path of evolution that is not limited by any false ideas of duality. Whereas with religious indoctrination and false light programming, we stick to false order, we stick to false light, we hold on to coping strategies, and our whole reality becomes a big coping mechanism. Okay, the entirety of the New Age community, the New Age therapeutic community, as well as the self-help community, the spiritual community, all have religious indoctrination because a lot of these approaches are labeled as healing and evolution, but in reality, you're given coping strategies. Okay, most people, not saying all people, but most people go to therapy to cope with their emotions. Most people go into spirituality to cope with their emotions. Okay, they don't go into spirituality to actually go deeper into their emotions and actually process their emotions. Very few people actually go into therapy to genuinely go into their emotions and feel their emotions, but they go into therapy to develop coping strategies for their emotions, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's extremely hard on the body. So the rite of reverse baptism is basically a rite whereby you are saying to your soul, to yourself, and to your nervous system, to your body, that you are no longer living a life of repression. You are no longer living a life of false light. You are no longer living a life of false order. And the ripple that will take place after is going to be a full-on initiatory path working that will take you beyond those constraints of false order. So the mere act of inviting these forces into your field is going to create a very big ripple. It's going to cause false coping strategies to fall away. It's going to cause repressed trauma to come to the surface, to be processed and integrated. Therefore, one should not perform a reverse baptism if they are just wanting to focus on feeling good and they are only wanting to focus on maintaining their high vibrational state. Performing a reverse baptism or going anywhere near dark matter energies and the negative polarity is extremely unwise because it's probably going to unearth things that you're not really prepared to deal with. So you shouldn't go into a ritual which is as serious as a reverse baptism unless you are actually open and willing to go into your emotions and feel your emotions. Okay, and this is real self-development. I'm not saying that, you know, anything that doesn't involve dark matter energies and demonic spirits is not real self-development. I'm not saying that. But most things that are framed as self-development are not actually self-development at all, but are, you know, strategies, okay, strategies for kind of coping and dealing with life instead of actually dealing with the core of the problem. Okay, the majority of people that I've worked with who have, say, been to therapy or who have been operating within the New Age paradigms, you know, are severely confused as to what real healing and integration is. Real healing and integration is the feeling and embracing of your emotions and the feeling and embracing of your body sensations, and realistically a willingness to dive in to the abyss that your emotions represent. Okay, being willing to let yourself fall backwards into those emotions and allow yourself to feel them. When many people, when they realize that real spiritual evolution and real soul evolution is tied specifically to trauma integration, many people are not interested in that in any way whatsoever and would much rather dissociate themselves, say, through the use of plant medicine, through, you know, the use of energy healing modalities that are there to dissociate you, and would rather choose spiritual dissociation and frame it as evolution instead of actually go into the crux of the problem. So when you are receiving a rite that has the intensity of a reverse baptism, is that you're saying enough is enough. I'm not dealing with this sort of patriarchal system and religious indoctrination within my system anymore, and I'm going to make the conscious decision to step onto a path that is going to initiate me out of that indoctrination altogether and bring the two polarities into balance. Now, the very name reverse baptism, or the term reverse baptism, will trigger an alarm bell for many people who do have religious indoctrination. I didn't realise that I was holding on to religious indoctrination, extensive religious indoctrination, right up to when I entered my Clifothic initiation through the Dark Kabbalah. Before that, I'd gone through years of shamanic initiation and years of self-development, but I didn't realise that there were still aspects of me that thought that I was condemning my soul when I was working with dark matter energies. There was still a part of me that feared what I was doing, and I wasn't even consciously aware of it. And as soon as I stepped onto the Clifothic initiatory path, I just felt like a huge veil just fall down, and then I really saw clear as day the true agenda of the daemonic and the true agenda of the negative polarity. And the true agenda of the negative polarity is merely bringing the positive polarity into balance, is merely sort of maintaining the cosmic flow of balance between light and dark matter energy, and the balance of death and rebirth, creation and destruction, masculine and feminine. And I really saw clear as day, and the deeper I went into this initiatory process, the more I saw and realized, the extent of the indoctrination of society. And, you really, gain very interesting gnosis into why the world is the way it is. And, a lot of that is down to false light indoctrination. It's down to false light indoctrination that caused people to ignore their shadow and refuse the fact that they even have an unconscious mind that's holding all of their repressed trauma all together, and stick to a place of false knowing, not truly realizing and understanding that from a psychological perspective, if you're holding on to your conscious awareness, all you're holding on to is a small beam of pure awareness, a small beam of pure awareness. 10 to 20% of your brain's capacity is what you are holding on to with the conscious mind. Completely ignoring the remaining 80%, which is your unconscious mind, and holding, may I add, your pure potential. So the title of a reverse baptism is not, refusing light. It's not fleeing from light, but it's dissolving false light. Okay. And the whole reason why we go into the shadow, particularly through the use of dark matter energies and sort of adversarial esotericism, is not to reject light. It's not to condemn the universe. It's not to destroy the world. It's for self-development. It's to own and integrate the personifications of your unconscious mind that you haven't looked at and integrated. Because from a psychological perspective, that is all a daemonic entity actually is. Okay, a daemonic entity from a psychological perspective, again, it doesn't refuse the fact that they are external beings that are older than any of us know, but they are separated, okay? And these beings therefore represent personifications of unprocessed trauma and unintegrated impulses and desires that, if you continue to ignore them, they are going to continue to leak through to your tangible reality. And this is what causes the corruption within the world. So a reverse baptism is not rejecting light, but is actually beginning the journey, the conscious journey of retrieving true light. Retrieving true light that represents the true soul's essence that has been repressed within the unconscious mind through trauma fragmentation. All of us have been through some level of trauma fragmentation in our early years that has then created a extremely painful, and we didn't even realize it at the time, but an extremely painful separation process whereby we are not only rejecting the feelings that are uncomfortable to feel, but in doing so we are rejecting the aspects of our inner child that represent how our soul actually wants to express itself. So the indoctrination of society causes us to leave our vulnerability outside of ourselves and leave any uncomfortable emotions outside of ourselves, and then end up framing it, if we take on a religious viewpoint, we then end up framing it as the devil, framing it as a demon, framing it as an adversarial force that is here to destroy your life, when there's nothing more illusionary than that. All the dark matter energies are expressions of your own unconscious mind. They are really archetypes to help you to get to know yourself better and help you to integrate deeper aspects of your unconscious mind that you have refused. But they are also gatekeepers, gatekeepers over profound wisdom, profound knowledge that has been villainized from the very moment religious mythology was twisted by the church. And I say it's twisted by the church because if you look at the older texts, which are still around, the Bible was manipulated. It was manipulated to have control over the masses. If you look at the older editions of the Bible, whereby Christianity kind of merged with Gnosticism, a lot of the gospels that were actually honoring humanity's godhood were removed. A lot of the Gnostic gospels that were, like the Gospel of John, the Apocryphon of John, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Mary, all of these gospels were removed from the Bible purely because they are actually encouraging humanity to have its own godhood, okay? And they are actually encouraging humanity to actually live within the literal image of godhood, okay? And they're not encouraging humanity to sort of bow down to this external false god, which is really just a personification of humanity's falsehood and humanity's, resistance to actually grow towards its own power and capability. So you've got to understand that the Bible itself, is a manipulated text and continues to get manipulated as time goes on. Okay, it gets manipulated to align with the world around us to actually, move us away from sovereignty and into a place whereby we are honoring an external divinity. Okay, after all, God said, there is no God above me or no God beyond me. Okay, no God besides me. That was it. Okay, and in Gnosticism, when we really look at that on a deeper level, you see all of the gospels that actually refuse to actually kneel down to an external divinity and actually encourage humanity to find its own divinity, find its own truth, find its own God. And this is all the adversarial forces are here for. They're here to actually show you, oh, by the way, you have been fed a lie and you are actually the God. Yeah, everybody around you is a God. Everybody around you holds godhood, holds divinity, but the divinity has been so repressed to the point where the false self is then running the show. Okay, and that causes the majority of people to live within that false light dissociation, which is basically a zombified NPC state of consciousness. Okay, and the NPC state of consciousness is, in my view, scarier than it's scarier than say becoming a drug addict. It's scarier than being homeless. It's scarier than all of that because it's actually just functioning in the world from the false self only, with actually no soul essence coming through whatsoever. And a lot of humanity is operating from that space. Okay, an NPC, for those who don't know, it stands for non-playable character. Okay, and if you look in video games, there's those players that just kind of walk around and you can't play as them. They're just operating from predefined programs. This is the majority of our world. Okay, giving the divinity away, giving the sovereignty away, dishing our power out to external forces left, right, and centre, to the point where there is no sovereignty left within self until we choose to actually start exploring knowledge. Okay, the very thing that humanity was programmed to never seek. You can never seek knowledge. You can never seek what is hidden. You can never seek what is occult, and occult means hidden. You can never seek what is hidden because that is the very thing that got humanity banished from the Garden of Eden. That was the very thing that got humanity removed from paradise. It's gaslighting, okay? It's gaslighting. Anything, if I try and seek knowledge and I try and find out who I am beyond the constraints of the societal level programming, it's villainized on the religious level. It's villainized in the false light communities, okay? Well, as soon as I started working with adversarial spirits, I can't even tell you the amount of my business that fell away. It needed to fall away because it wasn't built off of my authenticity. But when I started working openly with adversarial forces and actually started mentoring people with, dark matter, primal shadow integration, and Gnostic related alchemical pursuits and occult initiation, a lot of my sort of base in terms of my clientele, a lot of my, the clients that used to come to me for healing and the clients that you and the students that used to come to me to learn completely fell away. And it's because, the very act of tapping into certain forces, it triggers that internal alarm bell. Even if somebody is not, directly religious, the very name Satan, Lucifer, Baphomet, Lilith, yeah, Beelzebub, yeah, all of these sort of ancient gods, when their names are mentioned, be honest with ourselves, be honest with yourselves. I'm referring to people who are not going through occult initiation and to people who may be watching this video who are new to this type of esotericism. Is there any part of you when I say Satan, okay, if you close your eyes and you hear me say Satan, Lucifer, okay, Lilith, Baphomet, yeah, what comes to mind? Yeah, be honest with yourself. Is there any alarm bell? Is there any kind of, resonance? Is there any sort of, sort of internal panic or internal sort of turmoil when I say that name? That is not like the fear that is associated with it. That is the programming away from knowledge, because these very forces represent personifications of yourself that when you process and integrate them and take them as aspects of yourself, they are going to lead you into a reality that is far beyond your comfort zone. They are going to lead you into a reality that is far beyond what you have, basically cultivated as safe and deemed as safe and worthy to feel. They are going to take you into parts of yourself and show you things about yourself, show you things about your personal power that are so personal and so incredibly life-changing if you're willing to flow with it, that it's going to be a huge threat to your false self. Okay, your false self is there specifically, your egoic structures, not saying the ego is bad, but your egoic structures are there specifically to keep you separated from knowledge, because knowledge is power, okay? And power is a threat to the patriarchal system, okay? You only engage with these types of energies and practices if you are ready to actually lead, okay? And believe me, I thought, I'm leading my life. I'm leading my life. It's fine. I'm leading my life. And then when I got into the cliff path, I realized, oh, shit, I was not leading my life at all in any way, shape, or form. And the further along you go, the more you shed of your false self, the more you get rid of that indoctrination, and the more you actually find your own sovereignty and you gain your own knowledge and your own experience as to how the universe came into being. That is, a serious threat to who you were before. Okay, and this means going into the parts of yourself that you have refused, going into the aspects of yourself that you don't want to look at. Okay, so the act of a reverse baptism is not an act of the dabbler, but is an act of actually taking the dark matter as a part of yourself. Okay, inviting these essences into your being to devour your falsehood. And when you do that, you start to flow with the current of the dark matter, of the primordial chaos, and you start to receive a type of initiation that is to take you beyond the constraints of what you have perceived as safe and into an area that you may not have explored before, into an aspect of yourself, an aspect of your life that you were told never to go into, an aspect of you that you were told never to go into, never to look at your repressed desires, never to look at your repressed shadows, never to even go into your unconscious mind, because the unconscious mind is hell. Yeah, the unconscious mind is the hell structure. It holds the hell structure. So when you're receiving a reverse baptism, you're taking hell as a part of you. Okay, hell is already within you. Hell is already within the world around us because the majority of the collective rejects hell, rejects what's uncomfortable, rejects the shadow, and then it oozes through the subconscious into the world around us and then actually cultivates a hell on earth. So the reverse baptism is a very powerful way of actually kickstarting this process of transmutation, this process of igniting your own divinity. And it doesn't mean that you are committing yourself to a whole kind of like lifetime of working with dark spirits. You're not offering your soul to anybody. What you're doing is that you're saying to your soul, I'm ready to retrieve you. I'm ready to actually get my soul back. Okay, because we don't realize that we have already sacrificed our soul by default. Okay, the majority of humanity has already sacrificed their inner child and are already living a life of pure obligation, of masks and roles that they never actually chose but were simply given to them. So the act of a reverse baptism is a very powerful process of initiation. You can perform your own reverse baptism. My reverse baptism, which I'm releasing onto my Patreon over the next week, calls upon four of the most powerful Clifothic metagods, which means that they hold the power of many, many, many daemons. Okay, over 100 daemons is what you're going to be interacting with simultaneously, which basically means that you are instructing over 100 adversarial forces that are bigger than our galaxy. If you were to actually assign a particular size and mass to them, you are actually saying, come into my field, come into my body, devour what is illusionary within me, rip apart everything that is repressing my own truth, rip apart everything that is repressing my own divinity, and tear away the programs and paradigms that are continuously sacrificing my soul and sacrificing my inner child in order to hold on to what feels comfortable and what feels safe. So this reverse baptism is a rite of passage that is going to create a big ripple effect throughout all aspects of your healing path, and is one to really consider. Is this something that I'm ready for? Am I ready to reject false light? Am I ready to reject false order and actually consciously begin the process of retrieving true light? The true light of my soul, the true light of my divinity, which represents who I am and who I have always been, but represents a state of being that by default, unless I do the inner work, is extremely unsafe for the false self. Okay, extremely powerful rite of passage to perform. Again, completely optional, but is one that I feel is very important, particularly for those who are wanting to engage in self-deification. Okay, as I said, my reverse baptism ritual will be live on my Patreon at within the next week or so. Okay, so you can sort of perform that ritual if you feel ready to embark on this deep initiatory path that is going to basically mark a huge turning point within all aspects of your life, and saying to your soul, I'm ready to be true, I'm ready to be authentic, and I'm ready to devour my falsehood. Very, very important. But I think that's everything I needed to say on this topic. Okay, as I said, definitely check out my Patreon if you are wanting access to this reverse baptism, or you can call on forces such as Satan himself, Lucifer, Lilith, and be guided from there. Okay, so thank you guys. Definitely check out the links within the description of this video, and I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe. Thank you.